Welcome everyone to another episode of Revolution Recap. We're coming right after the Revs defeating Atlanta United at home 2-1 with goals from both Brandon Bye and Carles Gil. The Revolution are now on 7 points and sitting atop the Eastern Conference. I'm Kris Valukis, and joining me today, as usual, is Sean Donahue and Greg Johnstone. Sean, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well. It's nice to be talking about a exciting game this week that wasn't decided on an own goal and 0.3 and 0.2 expected goals. There were actually some real chances in this one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Greg, how about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I would feel better if there was a U.S. Open Cup because I think the Revolution would have qualified for it, but unfortunately it was canceled because of you, Kris. So other than that, kind of like, sour note, I'm doing very, very well tonight.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tweeting at me the past week. I love hearing about how much the Open Cup has been canceled and that it's my fault. And I ran the numbers. The Revs would have qualified after tonight's win. And I'm a little bit heartbroken that it's not happening. But I guess overall, I'm doing okay as well. Can't be too upset when the Revs are taking away a 2-1 win over Atlanta. Key takeaways from the game tonight, though. Sean, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to steal a take that Jay Katniss has made in this podcast a few times, and that's the Revs just work better with Carles Gil in the center. I do think that's his best position. I agree with the decisions in the past to put him where they put him on the wing because of you could kind of force through that with Gustavo Bou available. But with Gustavo Bou out, Carles Gil ended up in the middle. And some of it's the opponent they were playing, but he ended up, I think, with 95 touches tonight. The past two games, he was in the 60 range for both of them. And, if you can get Carles Gil another 30 touches in a game, that's a really, really good thing for the Revolution. You saw how good he looked today. I think we'll talk about it more later. But, it was just a fantastic performance from Carles Gil. He had that great assist. He scored the penalty kick and, was probably unlucky not to have a few more assists in this one. And that touch he had late in the game, too. You can't speak highly enough about how good Carles Gil performed tonight, and because he was in the center, I think he got a lot more touches than he's gotten in the past two games. He always gets a lot of touches, but a 30 touch increase is pretty significant for your best player. And the formation and the way they played, and I think Revolution Report asked us a question about this, Carles Gil in the center and the formation, and I think they did look better this game. I think there's no doubt they looked better than they did last week against DC, where they, again, the opponent's different, but they absolutely looked better this week. It flowed better. Carles Gil with two true wingers beside him, I think gives him a little more freedom to control the middle. And I think that, it's going to be a difficult decision going forward what they do when Gustavo Bou is healthy, because I do think Gustavo Bou's best position is forward. And I don't think he can play Carles Gil in the center and Gustavo Bou next to Adam Buksa with two strikers and have it work the same way. So there's going to be some tough calls going forward. But, from this game and from what we've seen in the past, I'm on board the take that Jake's been saying for several podcasts that we've had him on, is that Carles Gil is just better in the center and the Revs work better with him in the center.
Yeah, Carles was phenomenal today. He had 1 goal, 1 assist. He was just unreal. And I guess that kind of leads into my takeaway. I'm going to jump in and put that in there. What I noticed is that there was something missing tonight, and you didn't notice it. And that's, of course, Gustavo Bou. First 2 games for him have been subpar, I guess I would say, to be polite. And then, of course, he's not even in the 18 tonight. I'm not sure what's going on with him. I don't know if there was any reports.
Jeff Lemieux said before the game, I guess, that he was injured, and Bruce Arena said after the game that he'll be back in training Monday. I think it was like some muscular injury or something. So it's not serious, whatever it is.
Okay, well, thank you. I was looking, I didn't see it. I didn't look hard enough, apparently, but that's why I have you, Sean.
And that's why you should be following Revolution Recap on Twitter. I'll give you a break because I know you were preparing for the pod. We went right after the game into the podcast, but just to let you know, Kris, you did miss that tweet from me. Feelings a little bit hurt, pride's a little bruised, but that's okay.
You send a lot of tweets. I try my best to keep up. But yeah, no, my takeaway is that Bou wasn't there and you wouldn't have even known it. Or maybe the Revs performed better because Bou was not there, and we were talking about how Carles Gil got an extra 30-plus touches, and a lot of that would have been touches that would have gone to Gustavo Bou. Nobody was forcing the ball to him. We weren't trying to push the offense through Gustavo Bou. And when Gustavo's on, obviously he's one of the best players in the league, and he's one of the toughest players to defend. And he's going to score goals from anywhere within 35 yards of the net. But when he's not on, I feel like he's maybe taking up too much space, taking away too many touches. I don't know where things are going with Gustavo Bou, but that's something that I absolutely noticed today, was that you didn't even notice that you were missing a designated player on the pitch.
And I think you were leaning towards something that I was thinking during the game, which is, you didn't quite go there as far as to say it, but I think the Revolution play better without Gustavo Bou, and it's not Gustavo Bou's fault. He's an immensely talented player, one of the most talented guys in the team, but I just don't know that he fits into the Revolution's system, with their three designated players. I don't know that's the perfect match. The way it works is, like I said, I don't know how you can play Carles Gil in his best spot if Gustavo Bou and Adam Buchanan are both out there. So it's a tough thing to say, but I think, based on what we've seen today, the Revolution might be a better team without Gustavo Bou, even though he's, arguably one of his top one or, top two or three most talented players in the team.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking today is Gustavo Bou maybe a better player for this team if he's coming off the bench late in games? And that could be how we best use him, but it seems like a waste of the DP spot to use as a super sub. Greg, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I just want to first off give a shout out to Jason Schmidt, who sent in a Twitter question as Kris was talking, and it was, did we miss Bou tonight? So I don't know if he's got some weird superpower and he knows exactly what we're talking about, but that was amazing timing by Jason. I kind of disagree with you guys a little bit here because I think the Revs did miss Gustavo Bou a little bit. They had some great service into the box, particularly in the first half. They just needed that finishing touch. There were a few moments where, obviously there was the Brandon by header, which was very, very nice. I think Buxa had got a toe to a Carles Gil cross that Guzan touched above the bar. Outside of that, the finishing was off tonight, kind of all the way around. And I think Gustavo Bou, you go back to the Chicago goal where it was a really, really nice touch past Shuttleworth there by Gustavo Bou. I think something like that where a guy who is a pure scorer who can get close to goal, I think that was missed a little bit tonight too. And I think he is a versatile player. If you give him the ball kind of outside of the box, he's able to convert on a long-range shot, and there were some long-range shots tonight. I just remember the Matt Polster shot going completely wide. I think he would have added another dimension to the offense, and I think he would have complemented the offense a little bit tonight. But overall, on the whole, I think this offense, what we saw tonight, is that the offense is very strong, even without him, which is a really, really good sign.
So I know my takeaway is going on a little long, but I'm going to ask one more question, I guess, about it now. I'm assuming Taijon Buchanan's start is because Gustavo Bou was not there. In the 15th minute, Adam Buxa, you were talking about crosses into the box. Adam Buxa had actually really, really beautiful cross coming in. Maybe it was a bit tough to get to, but Taijon did get his head on it, and it went maybe about 6 yards wide. If that's Gustavo Bou, does that go in the back of the net?
I don't know if Gustavo Bou gets to that header. And I also don't know if the Revolution get that penalty kick that they got from Taijon if Gustavo Bou is in the game. It's just a completely different team. Again, it's tough for me to say this because Gustavo Bou is extremely talented. So it's hard to say the Revolution are better off without arguably their second best player on the field. And I completely agree with Greg's point that Gustavo Bou gives you something nobody else does. It's just he's kind of that luxury player that's hard to fit in to a lineup, especially a lineup that has a Carles Gil. If you were kind of playing a straight 4-4-2 and didn't really have a great number 10. That might work, or if you were playing the formation the Revs are playing now, and Carles Gil wasn't available or something. There's a lot of ways in which Gustavo Bou can help a lot, and he can help a lot in what they're trying to do now. But it's just, to me, if you take away one of the wingers to put Gustavo Bou out there either as a striker or kind of play him on the left, I don't know that makes the Revolution better.
Yeah, this kind of blends in with your takeaway too, Sean, where, you're talking about Carles Gil in the center. Essentially, would you rather have Gil on the right, or at least starting on the right? I guess we should throw in the caveat that, everyone pictures how the formation is lined up. And Bruce Arena has said at every press conference for the last month that, Carles Gil is free roaming. He doesn't really have a position. If you look at the heat map, which, he also kind of is not a fan of heat maps either. He's not a fan of any stats whatsoever. He made a point of saying that, but he said if you look at the heat map, Gil is going to be all over the place. So there isn't a huge definition, but if you looked at the heat map, I think you would say that Gil is going to be kind of in the center and kind of be number 10. And what was the stat you threw out there, Sean, that Gil had 30 more touches tonight or something like that?
He had 93 touches tonight, and the past two games, I think he had 65 and 69.
Yeah, and Taijon gives them another weapon on the wings for Gil to pass to. There were so many give and goes. The play where Taijon draws the yellow, Taijon leaves the ball out for Gil. Gil kind of chips it between two people, and Taijon kind of takes it down the side, then goes one-on-one with someone and draws a foul and gets a yellow on a kind of a professional foul. That doesn't happen with Gustavo Bou out there. He's just not as quick. He doesn't have the passing abilities to do a kind of a quick combination like that. And yeah, we're basically trying to figure out, do we want another striker up top to complement Adam Buksa, or do we want another speedy winger with Taijon Buchanan? And I don't know if there's a wrong answer, but I think Carles Gil is more dangerous with another speedy winger going up and down the wings. I think that's the answer, but again, I don't know if there's a wrong answer, because I'm perfectly fine with a 4-4-2.
Yep, I think that's a fabulous take and a very fair one at that. But we should move on from my takeaway, I guess. And Greg, what do you got for tonight? I want to know.
Well, I think we kind of have already covered how good this team is, and we're sitting here with 2 wins, 1 draw, 7 points in 3 games, and a +2 goal differential. And honestly, I think this team is better than their record shows. And I think they have shown that they are MLS Cup contenders. And again, if you look at these stats tonight, the Revs' expected goals, I know last week the expected goals stat was horrific. Tonight it was a little bit better, 2.6 or 2.59 for the Revolution, 1.3 for Atlanta. So we doubled them up there. But you look at chances created, total shots, they're up 14-11, chances created 12-8. Possession was 56-44 Atlanta. The Revolution are better than I think their record shows and their stats show. I think if you watch tonight's game, they really dominated. And I know Atlanta was not playing a completely A team. But that entire first half, Atlanta was lucky to be going in level outside of a bad foul by Brandon Bai. I don't think Atlanta had anything going for them defensively. And that's 2 weeks in a row where the Revolution really have not conceded anything defensively or have had any mistakes. Again, one Brandon Bai penalty kick away from a really, really good defensive effort 2 weeks in a row. And again, even if you want to say, well, it's DC and it's Atlanta, yes, but good teams don't give up anything to those to bad teams. And I think the Revolution are proving that they are putting themselves in the upper echelon of MLS sides. So again, it's a 1-goal game. The Revs did win on a penalty kick today. I think in a lot of ways the Revs can look at themselves as a little bit lucky, but we talked about the Chicago game. There was a lot of chances that they had some missed opportunities and some bad finishing. They had some bad finishing last week. It should have been much more than 1-0. And I think about the 3-on-2 where Buksa didn't pull the trigger, didn't shoot with his right foot. That could have been a big chance. The Taijon header from that boost across, that could have been a great chance. There were a handful of plays today where it could have gone a different way, or 1 or 2 slight differences. The Maciel to Teal pass late in the game in stoppage time when Teal was on goal and the keeper came out just in time. There were a lot of really, really close plays that I think the Revs could have won this game by 2 or 3 goals easily, and I think they're for real.
I completely agree with you, but I want to play devil's advocate here for a second and say this was an Atlanta United team without a lot of their best players. Joseph Martinez didn't start. Miles Robinson didn't start. Ezekiel Barco didn't start. They were coming off a midweek CONCACAF Champions League game that was a hard-fought encounter for them. It was a great performance by the Revolution against a much weakened Atlanta United side that follows on the heels of a win against DC United that wasn't anything special offensively, and a tie against a terrible Chicago Fire team. Now, if you ask me if 2 wins and a draw out of your first 3 games, 2 home wins, 1 road draw, that's a fantastic start to a season. This performance was really good, but and I honestly I agree with your take, but I think there is the devil's advocate approach here that you look back at those 3 games and there is still a little bit of lingering doubt on what happens if they were playing Atlanta United when they had a full squad. And you mentioned the Revolution had a lot of great chances where they should have scored more goals. They did. Atlanta United had a great chance too, where Andrew Farrell turned the ball over. They had a 3-on-2 chance and didn't play it particularly well. Henry Kessler played it really well, but I still think Atlanta United could have done better there. And a little fluke the other way, and maybe Atlanta United ties this game 2-2.
My counter here, though, is Miles Robinson and Barco came in the 45th minute. I know Barco went off early. I'm not going to really put a lot of emphasis on the Revs being up a man, but Barco and Robinson came in the second half. Joseph Martinez came in the 72nd minute. And I don't think Atlanta United looked any more dangerous in the second half. Again, after Barco went off with 10 minutes to go, I think that we can certainly excuse that final 10 minutes, and that point is there, Sean. But even with a more strengthened roster from Atlanta, I don't think they looked much better today.
No, I think that's fair. I just think that you can go back and look at these 3 games and find reasons why you're not completely convinced yet. There's definitely reasons for that. And had this Atlanta United team had a full week of rest, had they had 100% Joseph Martinez and Ezekiel Barco starting from the beginning, had they had Miles Robinson, had George Bello has been a fantastic player for him. Had he started, who knows?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair to just say, obviously this wasn't Atlanta's team at 100% strength. And they did have several different injuries, even Dam went out. I didn't write down the minute, but it was pretty early on. I think it was in the first half. And then he was replaced by George Bello. And Dam was playing a good game. I can't remember his first name, so I'm just going to call him Dam. But I thought he was playing a good game defensively for Atlanta until he did go out. And then, of course, they had the Barco injury as well. Really tough spot for Atlanta because they still got another match. Was it Tuesday night? I think it is. Another CCL second leg. And they're already down 3-0. I mean, I think their CCL hopes are done. But
and now possibly no Barco for that game based on the injury he went out with. I think it's probably doubtful he plays.
Yeah, so it's absolutely fair to say it's not their best team, but I don't think that we should discredit the Revs' performance tonight. I do wish that they had scored some more goals, but yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with your take either, Greg. Revs are a good team.
I will concede that, and maybe I'll meet you here halfway, Sean, is that I would be more sold on them if they had to withstand a Atlanta push in the final minutes with 11 men on the field, with Barco on the field, and the Revolution trying to shield them off. I think we did lose a little bit of that aspect tonight to see how good the Revs are closing out games, because the Revs closing out this game and playing keep away and having Carles Gil run around and have Atlanta hopelessly try to drag him down, that really didn't tell me anything tonight. So I'll give you that there might be a little bit more to prove, but right now I think this team gets passing marks through 3 games.
I honestly would have liked to have seen the Revolution go against the full-strength Atlanta side, because I think the way they played today, they would have beat them. I'm disappointed we didn't get to see that.
All right, well, let's keep this train moving. Let's move on. Taijon Buchanan, he got the start tonight. Any opinions on his performance? Greg, I'm going to go to you first. What did you think of Taijon Buchanan getting the start?
Well, I first off think this was a really important game for Taijon Buchanan, kind of for the reasons that we mentioned earlier. There's a lot of debate over, if he's starting, who does he take over? And I think previously we've said, does he play for Traustason? Does he, Heel's on the right side, so he can't play here. Does he take over from Brandon Bai? And I think we have a debate now that maybe Taijon should be playing for Bou. I think Taijon killed it tonight. Carles Gil was fouled a lot, or it seemed like he was fouled a lot. He only really drew 3 fouls. In his 70 minutes, Taijon Buchanan, I think, drew 6 fouls. He drew a really important yellow card early in the first half. I think it was the 3rd yellow card for Atlanta United. So it just seemed like everything was going wrong for Atlanta, and Taijon was more or less toying with them. So outside of that missed header, I don't have a lot of complaints.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I thought he had a great game, and Bruce Arena said after the game it was his best performance of the season. I think that was kind of a low bar because he had a poor performance to start the year and then played, 15 minutes the last game. Regardless of that, it was a good performance. I thought he looked really good. He got the penalty kick that ended up winning them the game. He had he was fouled a ton in this one. They really struggled to control him, and I think he provided a great outlet for Carles Gil. The stats don't necessarily show how important he was to the Revolution in this game, but I thought overall it was a really good performance from Taijon, and it's going to be a very difficult decision for Bruce Arena next weekend what to do.
Now, I know we didn't talk about this before starting recording, but I'm going to throw it at you guys. Could you pull out your best Jake Hattonese performance and tell me, was that actually a penalty on Taijon Buchanan?
So Jake messaged me because I asked him, I paged him. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to just repeat Jake's opinion because I think it's the right opinion. But if you are on the line, it's technically in the box. And in real time, I thought it was a good call to put it outside of the box. But I think if you watch it in slow motion, you can make the argument that half his body is in the box or over the line or on the line. I think you can really, really slow it down and go frame by frame. And, it went to VAR, so obviously it was a clear and obvious call. They felt that way, and the referee felt it was worth overturning. So I think that's the explanation, and I think that is the reason. So I will go there. But in real time, if I was an Atlanta fan, I'd be a little bit annoyed about it.
I thought it was a very borderline call where if the referee had called it a penalty, it wasn't going to get overturned on VAR, and if the referee didn't call it a penalty, it was too close to say it was clear and obvious. I don't know. Even with a lot of replays, I struggled to say this was so obvious I got to overturn it. So I'm surprised it was overturned. I think that Traustason had a good case for a penalty kick later in the game that maybe he would have gotten if they didn't get this one. So I don't know. The more I watched it, the less sure I ever was that it was, obvious enough that it should be overturned on VAR. Again, if you call it in real time as a penalty, I think it stays. But I was surprised it got changed.
Yep. I'm in your camp. I didn't think there was anything clear and obvious about where that call should have gone, and therefore I think it should have stood as a free kick outside the box. But hey, you know what? Revs benefited. It's not too often we get to say that when it comes to VAR. So I'll take the goal. I'll take the 3 points away from it, and we'll move on.
Wait. I have one more point about Taijon Buchanan.
I did too, but that's fine.
Maybe it's the same point. But what do you guys think? Do you think Taijon Buchanan is, part of the argument about where to start him and where to play him and all that stuff. Do you think Taijon Buchanan is just a much better player as a starter than as a super sub? Because he's shown flashes as a super sub, but he feels a little bit out of rhythm and out of sync. Whereas as a starter, as a 60, 70-minute player, he seems to be putting in better performances. Do you have any opinion on, maybe he's just a guy that we need to be throwing out there as a starter?
I think that he definitely thrives as a starter. I think he's a very confidence-heavy player. From the outside looking in, when you give him that start, he goes into the game with a lot more confidence. When he's coming off the bench, it looks like he's trying so hard to prove that he shouldn't be coming off the bench, and maybe trying too hard where he's not actually performing to his capabilities, or he's making more mistakes that he necessarily would not regularly make. Also, this is the first time that we've seen him play this year on the right wing, and I think he's so much better in that position than he is left wing, left back, or right back. He's an attacker, and he's got to be on the right hand side. So if you're playing him on the left hand side, I think that's also going to be a hindrance to his confidence. I don't know, Sean, do you have an opinion too?
I think he is better as a starter. I think he grew into this game too. I think like Kris said, he hadn't played on the right this year, and there was a little bit of rustiness at the beginning between him and Brandon Bye. They weren't always on the same page. And because he started, there was plenty of time for them to figure that out, and they did. Where if you bring him off the bench and he hasn't had much time there, it's a harder role. With that said, with his skill set and his pace, he seems like a guy that would be a great super sub. So I don't see why he couldn't be. But based on the balance of this year, I think starting him in a position he's comfortable in is where you're going to get the most out of him. With that said, they do have a really pacey guy in Emmanuel Boateng that we haven't seen yet this season. Wasn't on the bench this game. I wonder, I don't know if he was injured or what, but I wonder, when we're going to see him, because he seems like the guy that if you're starting Buchanan and you want some pace off the bench, you might see coming in late in the game.
Yeah, I was really concerned. I'm not going to complain about Bruce not using all of his subs here tonight because they were playing so well. I don't think he really needed to make any changes. But I found it weird that they put Tommy McNamara on the left side for Traustason as opposed to Emma Boateng, because I thought Boateng would have done a great job keeping possession, stretching the field. It got to a point where they were just kind of huffing it long and hoping Buxa could hold possession. And I think Boateng would have added a little bit more to kind of that vertical, defense, so to speak.
The one other point I wanted to make before we do move on with Taijon is, as far as his performance goes, I still feel like he showed to be a bit of a defensive liability. And so as long as the Revs are playing him more in the attacking position, I'm more than happy to see him get more opportunities out there. When we see him needing to track back and trying to win balls, I feel like, like I said, it's a liability, and he's not the best one-on-one defender.
I think Atlanta United, whatever their SB Nation site is, they tweeted out the heat map of where Taijon Buchanan's average position was somewhere in the first half, and he was literally right outside the 18-yard box, and they said this is never a good sign. So, it might have been the reason why Taijon Buchanan played so good today is because he was getting into attacking positions and he was causing so much havoc. I agree. I think his defense needs a little bit of work, and the more offensively, the more he's pushing up, and the more he's in attacking areas, the better he is.
And I will also note, in the 71st minute, Taijon did make space for himself outside of the box and took a shot. Definitely skied the shot. He's definitely trying and he's pushing to get that goal. I think once we see him bag a goal or two, I think that maybe we'll find some more rhythm when it comes to the Taijon Buchanan experiments. I almost said experience like it's Jimi Hendrix, but the experiment, I guess. I don't know what else to call it right now because I don't know where we're putting him, where we're going to see him next. But for me, it's just some sort of experiment, and tonight was a success. Moving on to the other right-sided player, Brandon Bye. Did he have a good game? I don't even know what to think about him. Sean, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about Brandon Bye's game? He had one goal. He also conceded a penalty, I guess. kind of went two ways. What's your opinions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. It really is a tough one to analyze his performance, because it was a great header that gave the Revolution the early lead, and it was a terrible foul that gave the lead right back. Overall, I think he played pretty well. At the same time, it worked out great that he scored that goal, but it was also the Revs turned the ball over and he stayed up forward, which looks great when it works out, but doesn't look so great if it ended up being a counterattack. I give him a passing mark for this game. I think overall it was a decent game, but he's at the level now where he's got to not make a dumb foul in the box like that one that he made. He got beat and then he compounded the error by committing a dumb foul, and you can call it a soft. The guy went down easy, but it was a PK. At the end of the day, it was a PK. It was the right call. And it was a dumb play by Brandon Bai. So, what would have looked like a really good game from him, you got to take several notches down for conceding. The only goal the Revolution gave up was, the dumb penalty kick that he committed the foul on.
And Turner almost saved that pen too.
He did. It was a pretty good penalty too. Yeah. So it would have been really impressive if he had saved it.
Yeah, I think, and Jeff Lemieux tweeted out that I think it was his fourth straight penalty kick save. So the streak is over. Very, very close by Matt Turner. I don't know how he does it. I guess he's only 1 for 7 in MLS regular season penalties, which seems wrong. But I guess he makes all of his saves for the national team in the playoffs when it matters the most. So I'm glad he's saving those saves for labor. But no, Brandon Bai, a real Jekyll and Hyde performance today, I thought. Great header. Brandon Bai is a very frustrating player because he does so many things really, really well. I think I saw a stat in the game notes today, in the media game notes, that Brandon Bai is leading or tied for the lead in MLS in aerials won by a defender. And that's really good for a right back too, not even a center back. So he's very, very good in the air. He's usually very good in one-on-one situations. He obviously got beat on that penalty kick and made it even worse by fouling from behind. So he's usually pretty solid defensively, but obviously we talk about his crossing a little bit. His passing today, again, very poor, 59% passing. And for a guy who's getting, second most, third most touches on the team, passing at a 60% clip is never very good. Obviously, he was over 2 on crosses, over 2 on long balls, only had one touch, he only had one key pass. Did have 69 touches, so a little bit of that, hooray for that, but 8 for 20 on duels. So overall, I thought outside of his goal, if you take away his goal scored, I don't think we're looking at Brandon Bai as a very good player on the pitch today, but he makes up for it with winning that aerial. It was a really, really good run too, where he looks like he's going far post, then cuts on the inside and has a good foot of space on his defender. So I think we had some really good highs from Brandon Bai today, and I think we had some really, really bad lows, obviously with the penalty kick being the most glaring example. So, I think, Sean, you said he was a passing grade. I give him a passing grade too. It's kind of weird to say that about a goal scorer, but I don't think this was Brandon Bai's game, even with the goal.
I'm on board with you guys. It's a passing grade for me as well. And, he has one of his 3 or 4 goals now, so Bruce Arena is only going to be asking for 2 or 3 more. Any other thoughts before we move on from Brandon Bai?
Henry Kessler still 3 or 4 goals away.
Yep.
Damn woodwork.
The woodwork that was a tough one. What minute was that in?
That was the 17th minute.
Yeah, that was tough. And then I have to make note of that play too, because right after that went off the woodwork, there was a pretty great piece of skill shown by Buxa to take down that ball. Too bad nothing came of it from that point. I think we scored a minute or 2 later, but.
It drew the corner. It drew the corner kick that started the sequence of events that led to the goal. So I think we can kind of indirectly give some credit to Adam Buxa for keeping that ball alive and drawing a corner kick.
Yeah, it was a nice piece of skill that I didn't know he possessed. So all right, well, let's keep it with the outside backs. I want to talk about Dwan Jones. Last week he missed the match because he was out with a red card, which I don't think anyone thinks should have stayed a red card or stayed as a suspension. But he returned. He got to start over Mafla. What are your takeaways?
Yeah, well, one thing we have to preface this with is that Bruce Arena said that Mafla is still working his way back. I think he said he's about 70 or 80% fitness. So that comes into play a little bit here. I wonder if the original thought process here was DeJuan Jones gets the start and Mafla comes in if they need a goal, or if they, if situation changes, if Jones is not playing as well like if he played the way he played in Chicago, maybe Mafla comes in for the second half. I think that might have been what the game plan was coming into this one. But Dwan Jones, I thought, played phenomenally. He had defensively too. He had a number of great plays. There in the 77th minute, I thought his best play was he actually gets beaten by Moreno, but he essentially kind of wins the ball back and he kicks the ball off of Moreno, and that was out for a goal kick. So, he has that speed and that raw athleticism that is able to kind of cover for mistakes. And we saw that a few times today. And we also saw some just really nice anticipation from Dwan Jones. He kind of pushed up. He kind of helped lead the counterattack a couple times. So I thought Dwan Jones put that Chicago performance behind him. I thought it was a really, really good performance by Dwan Jones. And we talked about how Mafla might be taking the left back spot away and how we kind of expected him to be the favorite coming into the left back spot for the season. I think Dwan Jones is making a very, very strong argument. Overall, I think really, really good marks for Dwan Jones tonight.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less high on Dwan Jones' performance. I thought defensively he was pretty good. It was interesting. Who Scored has him as the lowest rated starter on the Revs at 6.23 on their rating system. But one thing that stood out to me a bit was what Charlie Davies called out, and that's the inherent limitation of Dwan Jones is that he's a right-footed player playing left back. And you saw that a few times today. There was a couple times where I thought, Traustason looked a little bit frustrated because Dwan Jones missed him with a pass, again, because he tried to do it with his right foot or did it with his left foot and it wasn't accurate enough. Defensively, I think it was a much better performance than we saw in the first game of the season. I thought he was, overall pretty solid. There was one time late in the game where I think his speed ended up being too much and he overran a ball and led to a chance for Atlanta. But I do think you saw the limitations in this game, as Charlie Davies pointed out, of having a left back that's not left-footed.
Yeah, I thought Dwan had a good game, but he did look a little lost, I guess, in some points where he didn't know necessarily what he was going to be doing with the ball. I wouldn't say he had a bad game, but it wasn't the most impressive performance for me. But I still think it was a little bit better from the performance from Mafla last week, even though Mafla won a ton of challenges. He was very aggressive, and I think that's the part that worries me when it comes to Mafla being out there. Whereas Dwan Jones, he doesn't have to be so aggressive because he has that speed to track back if needed. He was 78% on his passing for the night, and I think that's a solid stat for a left back, but I would like to see him advance the ball a bit better upfield.
I think Sean is kind of hitting on a really important point, too. If we're talking about Mafla versus Jones long term, we talk about how Brandon Bai can't cross. Can Dwan Jones cross with his left foot? Have we ever seen Dwan Jones cross with his left foot? Even his right foot. I think we've seen it a couple of times, but really Dwan Jones, when he gets up, we saw it today where Traustason had that really nice play where he kicked the ball down the wing. I forget what minute it was. I think it was like the 8th minute. He keeps the ball in, he kicks it down the sideline, and then he kind of pushes it in towards the center, and Dwan Jones is making that kind of run inward. Dwan Jones, when he gets up in the attack, he's great, but when he's overlapping and he runs into the left, the upper left corner, he can't do anything. He can't do anything with the ball. He can't cross it. He's fast and he can run up there. That's great. What is he going to do when he gets there? He has to beat someone one-on-one, and he's really, really limited in that sense. So I think Mafla is, I don't know how well he was crossing the ball yesterday. It's still to be determined how great of a crosser he is. But that certainly is an aspect that is going to favor Christian Mafla every single time going out there.
Well, that's a great point, because there's been a lot of talk about Traustason and his ability to kind of cut inside. He's a left winger that can cut inside and create chances, and that becomes a lot less of an asset if you don't have a fullback that can overlap and create space in the wing. And Dwan Jones can for his speed, but then he's not a threat. He's not someone that's going to get down to the end line and put in a left-footed cross.
Before we move on to talking about the midfield, I wanted to talk about one more piece of the defense, which is Henry Kessler. I thought he had a really strong performance tonight. He even had that game saver after that Farrell turnover there. And then, of course, we talked about it earlier, he hit the post. 95.6% passing, 3 block shots, 5 clearances. I think that's a really good note. Is there anything anyone wanted to say about Kessler?
No, I just think he was fantastic. I think he had an argument for man of the match with the performance he put out there. He saved the defense a few times when there were mistakes, and I'm lucky that he was denied by the woodwork on that chance. But 95.6% passing, that's what you want to see out of your center backs. And I think the first game of the season wasn't the best one for Kessler, but this game was kind of vintage Kessler and what you come to expect after how good he was his rookie year.
Yeah, and 5 clearances. That's going to be a little bit off of his pace so far this season, because he came into this game with 18 clearances, which was best in MLS. So another phenomenal performance by him. Not a big stat padding game for him. I think, because Atlanta wasn't really putting too much pressure on the Revolution today, but really, really strong performance from Kessler. And he also showed a lot of ability going up, holding the ball in position, almost leading a counter. I mean, he's really good at his feet, and he's really good moving the ball as well. Obviously, that 95% passing shows that, but he gets up and he helps the attack sometimes, and just a real joy to watch.
I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. I mean, you both have taken all of my opinions. You know, Kessler had just a stellar game, and it, like you said, Greg, is a joy to watch. And speaking of joys to watch, Carles Gil, do we want to talk about him anymore? I mean, we've talked about him a bunch already. We have him slated right now to talk about. 1 goal, 1 assist. Maybe his passing could have been a little bit better, 71%. I know at the end of the game, maybe those heavy legs were getting to him. Although he's still able to take insane touches, like that one in the 90-something minute, which still blows my mind. I don't know how he was able to take that down so calmly and then make Sosa fall over himself like that. I think it was Sosa. Carles Gil was just phenomenal tonight. I don't know if I can talk about it enough. Anything that either of you want to add? Sean, I'm going to go with you first.
No, it's just he put in a phenomenal performance, and seeing him in the middle kind of unleashed him even more. He's been good all year. Yeah. Let's not get that wrong. He's been amazing all year, but this was even another level that we saw him at today. He's fantastic. It's very clear that he would be the best player on just about any team in the league, and the Revolution are very lucky to have him.
The only thing I'll add is that if anyone finds any bookies online that I can legally bet for MVP ons on Carles Gil, please let me know, because if the Revolution end up being a top team in the East, Carles Gil is going to get some MVP votes. I mean, he's just phenomenal game in and game out, and you're missing Gustavo Bou, and he made up for it and more. I mean, every time he gets the ball, it's really incredible, and I think the additions of Traustason, Captum, Maciel, perfect passing rating. I know we're going to talk about him in a little bit. Polster's at 95%. When the Revolution are holding the ball and they're able to move it around, Carles Gil is just the perfect middleman. Just absolutely incredible work by him tonight, and a real pain for opposing defenses.
Yeah, and like you said, we're going to talk about Maciel. Carles Gil got somewhat of a new partner in midfield. Maciel's maybe the bridge between Carles Gil and Matt Polster. I thought Carles had a great game, and I think a lot of that was thanks to Maciel. And I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to take the first take on Maciel here. He did have 33 for 33 passing, like you said, which is incredible. I thought from the eye test, his night was not quite as good as it was. And then I'm looking at the stats once the game is over, and it's kind of blowing my mind that he was that much of a difference maker for the Revolution from start to finish. I made notes, and I don't think I had any positive notes from Maciel until about the 70th minute. Or maybe 65th minute was the first positive note that I had, and that's where he had a nice touch, took it around and a defender, and created a chance. Maybe it was just beginning of the game jitters or something like that, but we're looking in the 7th minute. Moreno made a move on him, and Maciel looked like he belonged in USL in that moment. Moreno took a shot on goal. I think it was going wide anyway. It was a curler, but Turner still tipped it out, and it led to an attacking corner, of course, for Atlanta. And that's a dangerous situation to be in any time that you're facing Atlanta. I don't care if Josef Martinez is on the pitch or not. And then the next note that I had on him was not until the 36th minute. So he was kind of invisible for me, where in the 36th minute, he did foul someone for Atlanta. I didn't write down the player's name. I don't think I caught it, but it was kind of a quiet night, but it was a positive quiet night where he's still got that 100% passer rating is just, it's phenomenal, especially, considering he did go 90 minutes.
Well, it was an efficient night. I'll say that. I think that's the word you're looking for. He was efficient. And if you look at the number of touches he had 41 touches, which is pretty low on the team. I mean, the only Revolution players that had fewer touches than him were Matt Turner with 21, which is very, very understandable. Taijon Buchanan was tied with him with 41. He came off in the 72nd minute. Tristan, I guess the way we say his name is Traustason. Is that right? There's an I somewhere, even though it's whatever. Traustason. Tristan had 31 touches through 72 minutes. Buchs had 26 touches through the whole game, I guess, which really surprised me. I thought Buchs was more involved in this game than Maciel. But yeah, Maciel didn't have, I don't want to say didn't have a ton of important touches because he was, as you say, perfect on the night for passing. And 18 of his 33 passes were in the opposition half, so it's not exactly like he's doing back passes and all that. But yeah, I mean, some other plays that I thought really stood out to me in the 65th minute, there was some nice buildup where he was able to receive a pass and kind of push it off to Gil, and Gil was going to chip it to Taijon, who was cutting into the box, and that the pass from Gil to Taijon was blocked. But Maciel did a great job getting the ball to Carles Gil in a dangerous position. And then, of course, in the 91st minute, the long through ball to Teal in stoppage time. That was really, really great vision by Maciel, and also a really good connection between him and Carles Gil, where Gil kind of slipped it through two defenders, and Maciel knew exactly where to be to receive that pass. So he seems to have a connection and shows a lot of visibility and awareness. And, you know, even though he didn't have a lot of important plays, I mean, for a defensive midfielder, that's not exactly the worst thing in the world, because I think the moments you notice him is when he does, as you say, in the 8th minute, miss a play, kind of get traffic coned, have someone run right around him. Those are the moments you're going to remember for a defender, you know, when you think back to the game. So, yeah, I wouldn't say this was a sparkling, beautiful debut, a man of the match performance for Maciel, but he certainly did his job. He certainly was extremely efficient. And what we've heard about from him from Bruce Arena is that he is able to hold the ball. He's able to pass the ball. He works under pressure, and 100% passing accuracy in his first game, I think really shows that.
I can't recall ever seeing somebody in their debut go 90 minutes with 100% passing accuracy, which is, you know, really impressive. And I think he had, you know, maybe one time, I was looking, very, very little dispossessed. He was dispossessed one time all game. So in that sense, you know, very good job. He's a 21-year-old making his MLS debut. It's a huge step up from, you know, the USL 2 level to MLS. You know, it's a huge step up from that level to MLS preseason, and that's another step up to a regular season game. So in that sense, you know, good job by him. He's 21 years old. With that said, the number one play that stands out in your mind after this game, seeing him, is the one that, you know, both of you talked about with that 8th minute play where he looked like a deer in headlights defensively. So it's a good base for him to start his MLS career on, and, you know, a lot to build upon going forward. And, you know, again, Greg, you mentioned 41 touches. As a central midfielder, that's a really low number. So, you know, when Kris says he didn't have a lot written down, it's because he wasn't involved a lot for a central midfielder. So I think we saw some signs of what he's capable of, but there's a lot more to come from him, and I think a lot more for him to, you know, build up going forward.
Well, so that leads me into one of the questions that we did get before we go through all of our listener questions. There was one from Quite Revs over on Discord, and he wants to know, what is Maciel's ceiling like? Could he continue to start and become elite? So, Sean, I don't know if you wanted to continue with your thought there.
I think it's saying something that, you know, he went 90 minutes in this game, and Captoum was on the bench who started the last game and didn't see a second in this one. That was actually kind of surprising to me. So Bruce Arena obviously thinks very highly of him. I don't know what his ceiling could be. I think, again, you know, having a guy that plays that role and doesn't turn the ball over is huge. You know, is his ceiling, you know, a more elite version of Scott Caldwell, or is it something higher than that? You know, from this game, what we kind of saw was a younger version. I think in some ways a younger version of Scott Caldwell that wasn't as polished as Scott, but had the kind of the same qualities of Scott Caldwell, is that he doesn't turn the ball over generally. You know, there's some exceptions in the Brad Friedel era where Scott Caldwell didn't have some good games turnover wise, but you know, when you look at 100% passing, it reminds me a bit of what we see from Scott Caldwell, where maybe he's not showing up making the, you know, the key huge plays, but he's making the smart play in the center of the field where he's not turning the ball over. You know, I think Maciel could be a great kind of two-way player for this team, defensively, offensively. It's hard for me to say what his ceiling is right now. But again, a 21-year-old that didn't turn the ball, that was dispossessed one time the whole game, 100% passing accuracy, that's a great start.
Yeah, it's hard to draw what his ceiling is from one game, and I was really excited about this game because I watched a few Revs 2 games last year, but you know, I can't say I was scouting Maciel too heavily. Yeah,
I think Brad Feldman was, though.
Apparently. Oh, well, apparently Bruce Arena was too. But
absolutely.
Yeah, it's tough to really get into how good of a ceiling he has. I would say his ceiling is above Scott Caldwell, which is not an insult to Scott Caldwell. I know a lot of Revs fans are not huge fans of him, but in his heyday, he was a really good complementary player to Jermaine Jones in that 2014 season. I'd have to kind of look at a passing chart to see how much my confidence is in Maciel, to see. I'll do a little bit more digging before I reach out for a ceiling, but I would say it's realistic to say he is going to be a starter for the Revolution this season and the few more seasons going forward as a very, very reliable starter. I don't have any issues saying that just from what people within the organization say about him.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to 18 of his passes, like you said, were in the attacking half, which means the other 15 were in the defensive half, which is telling you positionally he's playing right where you would want an 8 to play. He's a 6-8. I'm getting my numbers mixed up. A central midfielder, a box-to-box midfielder, where you want them to play, and he's not necessarily favoring one side or the other. And we did see him track back when he needs to. We saw him join the attack when the ball was advancing forward, and I think positionally that is definitely a bright sign of a great future. Let's move on. We have a question from David Sibillan. The lads need to put teams away. I feel we got lucky with that penalty. And he asked also about Bou, but I think we've already touched on that. So first of all, I'm going to take this one right off the bat and say absolutely need to put teams away. The finishing is still not where it needs to be. I need to look at the stats again because I don't remember how many chances we actually had versus how many goals we had. 2 goals, 12 chances created.
14 total shots.
Yeah, 14 total shots, exactly. And it's a little underwhelming on the attacking front.
2.6 expected goals.
Yeah, exactly. There's 2.6 expected goals. And, they did get the 2 goals. So I guess, they're right around where their expected goals is. But the eye test tells you that maybe the expected goals was more like 4. In my opinion, anyway. Brad Guzan, he came up big a couple of times. But I still think he's more beatable than what the Revs did tonight. And if they cannot start finishing more of their chances, I think that it might cause some problems down the road.
Well, going back to my key takeaway too here is that, we say 2.6, 0.8 of that is going to be from that penalty kick. So really without the penalty kick, we are looking at 1.8 to 0.4, I think, in expected goals. We did get lucky with the penalty kick tonight. We really did. We got lucky last week with the own goal. But I think in both the DC game and in this game, you are coming away from this game knowing that the Revolution are the better team. I don't think there's anyone in DC or in Atlanta or anywhere across the country that is disputing the Revolution have been better than their opponents in the last 2 games. So it does feel lucky, walking away from these 1-goal wins with some cheap goals. But I think if you look at this team, how they're performing as a whole, I think they've earned their 6 points.
Yeah, I do think, again, I agree with all of you that they need to do better finishing. They should have scored more goals in this one. There was definitely some luck involved. At the same time, I think there was, probably a shout for another penalty kick in this game that the Revolution could have had. Don't want to get back to going to Gustavo Bou. Maybe he would have made a difference. Maybe if you brought him in the second half or something, could have scored a goal. I don't know. That's tough for me to say. I do think they played really well in this game, and it was just a case of a little bit better finishing was needed.
All right, moving on. We have a question from Mocha over on Twitter, and he says, would this be our first choice lineup going forward? It looked like it. Sean, what do you think?
I think it mostly should be. I think I'd like to see more of Mafla, like we talked about earlier. I think Mafla could be the better option at left back. I don't know that yet, but I think it's possible. And again, like I said, it's tough to bench Gustavo Bou, but I think if you're talking about, the best 11 rather than the 11 best, I think this, other than the left back situation, and I should also say too, I'm not sure about the central midfield situation either. We haven't seen enough of Captum to call that. So I guess I would say left back and central mid are 2 question marks, but I think this is close to the first choice lineup, or what should be the first choice lineup.
Yeah, I think Captum is the real big question mark in this lineup because we can talk about Bou and Taijon either all day, but I think either one of those guys is a good option. And I think at left back too, we talked about Dwan versus Mafla. I think Mafla is going to be the starter going forward. And a lot of that has to do with crossing and the attacking ability. I think I take the crossing ability of Mafla over Dwan Jones cutting inside. So I think those two are kind of still TBD. But if we're talking in the central midfield, I think Captoom is going to be involved somewhere in this starting lineup as a regular contributor. I think it's still TBD whether or not it is Captoom and Polster or Captoom and Maciel. It's hard to say Polster is the odd man out in this scenario because he's been great the last 2 weeks. We talked about Maciel. Polster also had 91% pass accuracy this week after being man of the match last week. So the Revolution have three midfielders, and Tommy McNamara didn't have a terrible game either. So I don't know if there's going to be some rotation throughout the year. I don't know if they're going to go matchup by matchup. I'm not completely sure, but as long as he's healthy, I imagine Captoom is going to be a starter somewhere in the central midfield.
Yeah, so we've touched on, of course, we have the question marks at left back, midfield, and then the Gustavo Bou Taijon scenario. But I'm looking also at Traustason over at the left wing. I thought he put in a good shift. He made a lot of really good runs and never got any service on any of those runs. But I'm thinking if none of those passes start connecting with him, none of the runs start, manifesting anything, nothing's saying that left wing spot belongs to Traustason. I wouldn't be surprised if he has another performance like this next week. If we have a midweek game after the Nashville game, if we see a change at that spot, especially with the fact that he's getting taken out 70 minutes into the game, it's kind of surprising to think of a player that's supposedly coming into camp being so fit as he was after playing World Cup qualifying for Iceland. And then he's still unable to make it 90 minutes. So that's a question mark for me, what's going on with the Traustason situation. Maybe it just needs time. Maybe it's going to iron itself out. Maybe next week he's going to bag a Hattie. I don't know. But that's where I'm looking right now, aside from those other three spots that you both mentioned. Okay, so Jay Hondo over on Twitter. Is it safe to say, after just a brief time with any Revs, Gil is the best player in team history? It's a bold question. Is anyone ready to make that statement? Greg, let's go with you.
No, not yet. And the way I think someone in Revs Discord asked, where is Gil in terms of the all-time Revolution team, players and all that stuff. I think if you look at what Taylor Twellman accomplished, I know obviously they are different positions, so I don't expect Carles Gil to score 100 goals and match Taylor Twellman, but Taylor Twellman did win an MVP. I believe he was on the best 11 four times. Sean, I might be thinking of Shalry Joseph on the best 11 four times. But either way, both Shalry and Taylor Twellman were top of the league performers and got recognition at the top of the league. So I know Carles Gil has won best 11 already from his debut season. I imagine if he stays healthy, he will get it again this year. I would say if he has 3 years in a row of best 11 performances league-wide, I'm willing to have that conversation. So the earliest I'm willing to have this conversation is next year. I will maybe consider reconsider if he wins MVP this season, which I'm not throwing out completely. So I think a better question is he the best playmaker in Revolution history? And I know Steve Ralston obviously has a really good, strong claim there, being among the all-time league leaders in assists. So I'll kick that one to Sean because Sean has a little bit more insight, but not willing to say best player yet, but I think best playmaker, I think he can make a case.
Yeah, I mostly agree with Greg. You look at, Taylor Twellman won a league MVP. Carles Gil hasn't done that yet. Shalry Joseph finished second for a league MVP, and Shalry Joseph, if you look at Shalry Joseph's career, he was a guy that could have the type of influence on a game that Carles Gil had. Now, it was from a different position as a defensive midfielder, but he was a guy that could carry the Revolution on his back in the same way that I think Carles Gil can at times. So no, it's too soon for me to say that. And, Greg mentioned Steve Ralston. Steve Ralston, phenomenal player for the Revs and elsewhere as well. Best right midfielder in league history, arguably. But, if you're talking about a number 10, yeah, Carles Gil is the best number 10 in team history. And they've had some decent number 10s. There's, Jose Cancedo is a guy that stood out to me. Carles Gil is a step above him. Lee Nguyen, fantastic for the Revolution at number 10. That one might be a little bit closer. His statistics, bear out that he was a fantastic player for the Revolution. I would put Carles Gil above him. And then you get down to the question of, are you talking about, when you say best player in team history, do you actually mean most talented player in team history? And I think that's kind of a different argument. But then if I go that way, then I got to throw Clint Dempsey into the mix. And you look at Clint Dempsey and the career that he had over in England after playing for the Revolution too. I think he's got a call for that. But Carles Gil is on his way to potentially being the best player in Revolution team history if he has a longer career here. I wouldn't say it's safe to say that he's there yet.
I want to jump in here real quick, Sean, because I'm going to expand this question a little bit, because I think you and we approach this question a little bit similarly in terms of, we want quantity plus quality. So we kind of value a prolonged career over a long period of time. And I think Carles Gil just hasn't been with the Revolution long enough. But if we expanded this question to, is Carles Gil on the Mount Rushmore of Revolution players? Because right now I think the Revolution Mount Rushmore is, Twellman, Shellery Joseph, probably Steve Ralston, and then add someone here. Do you put Carles Gil as that fourth spot?
I don't yet. I still have Matt Reese as that fourth spot.
That was my fourth as well.
Yeah, and Carles Gil could get there for sure, but I don't put him there yet.
Okay, I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, you guys really knocked it out of the park. I mean, it's just going to be beating a dead horse, I guess, with any more commentary on that. It's I think he's on the trajectory to becoming that if he keeps going the way he is, but we need to see a much larger sample size, I think, before we start making any claims like that.
I mean, I don't think you can put a guy on a team's Mount Rushmore when he hasn't played 100 games for the team yet.
Absolutely. And it absolutely is Matt Reese, by the way, too. That has to be number 4 in that list with how much he's done for this club.
Just really quickly, Carles Gil started 4 games last year on the regular season. He started 3 games this year. He's played 1 full season with the Revolution. So the talent is undeniable, but I just do think it's too soon to start saying this guy that's got 41 starts for the Revs and has looked phenomenal in those 41 starts, but it's still just 41 starts is overtaking someone that's played 200 games for the Revs and been extremely influential. And Matt Reese for a time was arguably one of the best, if not the best, at his position at points in his career. Shellery Joseph was the best at his position at points in his career. Taylor Twellman was the best at his position and points in his career. Steve Ralston absolutely the best in his position at points in his career. So Carles Gil off to an amazing start, and if he plays as long for the team as those guys did, I expect him to get there, but I just can't do it yet.
Well, not to beat this dead horse, and I know we're running long on this podcast a little bit, but if you were to do a most talented Revolution players ever, I mean, where are you starting with that one? Like if you're going with Dempsey, where are you? And let's say the question is the most talented in a Revs jersey, where does Carles Gil rank?
If it's most talented solely in their time in a Revs jersey, that I think you can make a case for him.
Okay, agreed.
All right, moving on. We got Quite Revs over on Discord. He has several questions. I think we already touched on the Maciel question. He also asked about Dwan Jones. What did we think of him? Did he cement a starting spot? We also touched on that, but the one piece that we haven't really talked about is Buxa. He wants to know opinions on Buxa. Are you disappointed in him? And as the resident Buxa stan here, I will take this and say I was not disappointed at all. I thought he showed excellent hold-up play, showed the ability to cross. We talked about that a little earlier. I guess I'm a little disappointed that he didn't get any shots on frame, I don't think. I haven't looked at that stat, but I didn't see him a lot necessarily in the attack. And maybe that's where he could have improved. Yeah, he had 3 shots. 1 was on target and 2 was off. 4 shots, actually. I don't know where that 4th shot came from or where it was
a block shot. He had 2 on target, 1 off, and 1 block shot.
Yeah, okay. I saw that now, too. I don't remember any of those shots, so I mean, I think that goes to show that he had kind of a quiet night on the attack. But no, I'm not at all disappointed with his play. I thought that he had one play that stuck out to me that maybe was a disappointment, and it was in the 37th minute where he got played the ball out wide by Gil on, I think it was a 3-on-2, and he hesitated. We talked about it a little bit before we started recording, and I called it he was pulling a Gustavo Bou, which is, I think, exactly the perfect way to put it. He got the ball out wide. He hesitated, exact same thing Gustavo Bou did last week, and then the opportunity disappeared. That's right. He did have that one shot there where he tried to make something of it. He took a left-footed shot, and it just kind of dribbled wide. It was really weak.
Well, I think if we are looking at that one play, if you take out that one play where it's a 3-on-2. Gil is running up the center. Buxa does a good job running out to the right, and Taijon Buchanan is speeding up onto the left. And I think what happened on that play is that Adam Buxa is expecting Gil to push it to the left, and he just doesn't look like he's ready for it. It's on his right foot. He can shoot with his right foot. He should have fired it. It's the same thing that we talked about with Gustavo Bou last week, where he just does not pull the trigger and shoot the ball. Buxa just doesn't pull the trigger. He holds the ball a little bit too long, and it ends up, I think, going out for he shoots it and it's blocked. I think that's the block shot there. I think he had a really nice toe touch on a Carles Gil cross in the first half that Guzan tipped over the bar. I thought that was a very nice play. And then he had the very nice cross to Taijon Buchanan from the left wing that Taijon Buchanan headed wide. So he did have some good plays and some bad plays overall. I don't think I'm disappointed in his performance. I'm disappointed in certain plays. There was another play too where Dwan Jones had the ball kind of in the center of the field, and I think he got a long pass from, I'm going to say Farrell or By or someone. Maybe it was Carles Gil who was booting the ball up the field, but I think it was Dwan Jones. He has the ball kind of at the top of the box. He loses it, and he's able to just kind of reach out and poke the ball forward and pokes it into the path of where Adam Buksa is. But Adam Buksa isn't anticipating it, so it kind of rolls a little bit far away and it doesn't lead to a shot. So I think Adam Buksa, I think I've said before, he does everything well but score goals. Yep. And yeah, you talk about the hold-up play, you talk about his passing ability. He had 86% pass accuracy tonight. He had 2 key passes. He won 7 of 13 duels, which is actually a pretty bad night for him. But he's very good in the air. He's very good at hold-up play. Overall, there was a lot of good from Adam Buksa tonight. He just didn't find the back of the net. That is disappointing, but I don't think this was a bad performance from Adam Buksa, even with him being shut out.
Cluggy over on Discord wanted to know, small sample size, but do you think the Revs looked better with the 4-2-3-1 over a 4-4-2? Sean, let's go to you.
Yeah, I mean, back to my first takeaway, I think they look better as a 4-2-3-1. I think that's the formation the Revs are the best in. I think that's the best formation for Carles Gil. Not the best formation for Gustavo Bou, and that's the problem. But I think Revs overall look better at a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah, again, we're going to need a little bit more time to figure out what exactly is best here, and it might be opponent by opponent, but I think either way is a good option.
Yeah, I favor the 4-2-3-1 personally. I like to see a little bit more in the midfield going on. I'd like to see a bit more possession, maybe some more passing. But I guess I'm biased towards a 4-2-3-1 over a 4-4-2 anyway. But I thought they looked better so far with the 4-2-3-1.
If Buksa becomes the clinical striker we want him to be, then the 4-2-3-1 looks a lot better.
Absolutely, yeah. That's I guess that's a key point there too, because the 1 in the 4-2-3-1 needs to be putting the ball in the net. So let's give it a couple games and see how Buksa is doing. Hopefully he's getting some goals, because right now, I mean, 1 so far through 3 games is kind of feeling a little bit like last year, but it's only a few games in, and his play is much better overall. Randy LH has a couple of questions. Starting off, assuming Maciel is the number 6, who is the number 8? Is it Polster, Kaptoum, a rotation? And he didn't even mention Luis Caicedo's an option as well. Greg, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, we kind of touched on this a little bit with Kaptoum a little bit. I think Kaptoum is, I don't know if there's even really going to be an 8-6 kind of split, or if they're both kind of be 8s, because I don't know. They all kind of seem to have the ability, Maciel and Kaptoum. I feel like they both have the ability to kind of pass and kind of help push the ball up and help in the attack centrally. So I suppose those are our 2 8s, but still a lot needs. I haven't seen them enough really to define them and give them a certain number just yet. So yeah, I think I kind of touched on this earlier. I think somewhere this is a Maciel Polster Kaptoum rotation of some sort. With I think Kaptoum is going to be your 8, and Maciel or Polster is going to be your 6. That's my guess from what we've seen so far, but don't quote me on that in a few months.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And, you mentioned Luis Caicedo, who we haven't seen yet this season. He was a great player for the Revolution a couple of years ago. So I wouldn't write him off. And some of it depends too on who's playing elsewhere on the field, because all these guys have different strengths and weaknesses. And, you go back to the years where the Revolution had left backs that were pushed forward a lot and needed someone to slot in, and Scott Caldwell was the guy that could always come back and cover the left back. If Mafla becomes the guy that pushes forward a lot and they need someone to cover, maybe that changes who you want as your number 6 or your number 8. So I'm very much on the fence about what ends up being the Revolution's long-term, 6 and 8. I'm not writing Maciel in as a starter yet. I think, he could be, but I'm not saying he's definitely that guy. You'd hope with Kaptoum, with his resume, that he becomes a regular. But it could be Kaptoum and Polster and not Maciel. It could be Caicedo steps in. This is the one area of the Revolution. This is the biggest area in the Revolution where I still have a lot of question marks over who steps in there. But like Greg said earlier, Polster's played 2 phenomenal games in a row. So you don't take him out right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you where it's a lot of question marks. I'm big on Polster right now. I think he has to stay in there, but I don't think this is a bad problem to have necessarily, but I think it's a problem that needs to maybe find a solution somewhat soon. You kind of want to start sticking with some guys, maybe build some better chemistry going forward. I don't know what it's going to look like, and I still want to see Caicedo out there. Like you said, it's too early to write him off. I'm not sure why we haven't seen him yet. I know he played in preseason. I think he scored an own goal for us or against us or however that works. But we still haven't seen Caicedo yet in the regular season, and that's something that I'm looking forward to personally. And then Captoon looked really good last week, so it's definitely a competition in that spot.
Well, Kris, one thing you and I have both kind of hit on in the past is that the Revolution's central midfield are short for the most part. There's not a lot of height there. Right. Matt Polster is the only guy that has anything resembling height at 6 feet tall, and to me, a defensive midfield is a spot where height matters. I don't think you want necessarily to have 2 5'6", 5'7" guys as your defensive midfielders. You could do it, but I don't think that's ideal. So I think that's one thing that kind of works in Matt Polster's favor is he's the only guy that really has any height in that role.
Yeah, I'm big on having that height in the midfield because you need it for the aerial duels. I mean, I guess we have some height out wide if Taijon's starting. Gustavo's 6 foot or so, I think.
5'10".
He's 5'10". He's a really big 5'10". He does not look like he's 5'10" out there. But that just goes to prove my point even more. But all the other guys in the midfield are like 5'9" or shorter, I believe. And that's a problem. That's as tall as I am. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know how I would compete in an MLS midfield for many other reasons other than height. But
mostly height.
Yeah, exactly. Mostly height. If I was a little bit taller, you'd be seeing me out there on the pitch. Rady also touched on Buxa a little bit. He said that it looks like Buxa disappeared in the second half. Any thoughts as to what changed? Personally, I don't know if I thought that he disappeared. I thought he was kind of the same mediocre to okay all game. I don't know. Did either of you see anything that stood out to you with that?
I thought I saw less of him late in the game, in part because it was more of Atlanta trying to push forward and fighting to get something, and also because the Revolution were wasting time. I wouldn't have been against if Teal Bunbury didn't come in. Otherwise having Teal Bunbury come in for like the last 15 minutes for Buxa to use his speed and his defensive prowess. I don't think we saw, at least to me, I didn't see as much of Buxa from the 70th minute onwards, and I'm not sure it's necessarily his fault, but I kind of noticed that.
Yeah, I think the Revs were playing to defend, and we still saw some huck it up to him and hope he wins it. And I mentioned the duels earlier. I guess he wasn't winning as many duels, especially the aerial duels. It was around 50%. Normally, I kind of expect him to be around 60%, and kind of hold the ball a little bit. So, I can't say I saw much of him in the second half. And the Revolution, I think, just as a team, were putting less emphasis on attacking. So I think it might have been more strategic as opposed to him kind of disappearing, being responsible for his disappearance, I'll say. But yeah, I was really surprised to see he only had 24 touches, and he really was ineffective that second half.
Yep. All right, well, moving along, I know we're starting to run a little bit long. So James Downing also wanted to know, lots of positives tonight, but I'm still concerned that long spells of pressure yielded few goals. Revs are surely below their expected goals, and stats show that they are below it. There's definitely a concern there. Greg, I want to go back to you. What do you think about the high pressure without much to show for it?
Yeah, and again, kind of ties back into my key takeaway, so I don't want to take up too much time here, but I think these goals are going to just start going in eventually. There's too many good passers on this team. There's too many distributors on this team. They had the distribution tonight too. They just didn't have the finish. So, whether or not that's getting Gustavo Bou back out there, whether it is just getting a little bit luckier in front of goal, I think there's a few things that just haven't not been going the Revolution's way. And some of that is anticipation. Some of it is Gustavo Bou and Adam Buxa in back-to-back games not pulling the trigger when they're at goal. So I think it's just unlucky. I think this is still a really, really solid team. And they're probably not where their expected goals should be, but I think that's going to change. I think they're more unlucky than bad.
when you've got a 3-on-2 break with Carles Gil leading the break and Taijon Buchanan on one side and Adam Buchanan on the other side, that's got to be a goal. And, not to hit home that point because we talked about it earlier, but, Adam Buchanan, I thought, other than the finishing, had a good game. But that is an area in which he needs to improve. He needs to be more clinical in those situations. And it is a little bit worrying. And, I think it is right to be concerned about that. But I do think there's plenty of reason to be optimistic that changes in the future.
And one thing, I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, but I think it's worth saying, is that normally the Revs were a team that, I think a few years ago, for a few years, they're only teams that can counter. And when you're exposed in the back, they're going to run a counterattack, and that's where they're going to attack. But they can't break you down. Maybe the Revs just only work from set pieces. The Revs can score from set pieces. If you foul Carles Gil, if you don't want him in open play, he's dangerous from set pieces. If you leave him alone, he is dangerous from open play, and he can find anyone. It seems like they can move the ball in through position. They can move the ball through the center. They can move the ball up the wing. And the Revolution occasionally too will boot the ball long and have you get in a foot race with Taijon Buchanan or Dwan Jones or Tristison, or they're going to force you to boot it long to Buxa and have him win the ball. There's many, many ways this team can move the ball and advance the ball and get the ball into the box. This is not a one-trick pony or a one-dimensional team whatsoever. So I'm not concerned about them long term. I just don't think the goals are going in for them right now, and I'm not slamming the panic button until we get a few more weeks in.
I think to counter that point too, they are a multifaceted offensive threat, with so many different ways to attack and to really push you. And expected goals tonight, 2.6. Only 2 goals to show for it, which, again, it's not bad, but it's still under the expected goals. 2.6 is a pretty good expected goals amount, I would say, for a game. I'd like to see a little bit more with how much we're attacking. And while I'm not hitting the panic button yet either, it's something that I'm definitely concerned with. And I think it's something that maybe tactically Bruce needs to find a solution for, or maybe it's just a matter of waiting for Tristison to start gelling. And Buxa and Bou and Gil to also find a way to work as a 3-headed monster. Moving on, last question I think we got for the night is from TSB11. Is Tommy really our fourth winger? Obviously talking about Tommy McNamara. Boateng didn't make the bench, and I feel like this game we could have used him. And I know we talked about this briefly earlier, but Sean, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I agree. I feel like this was a game that could have used Boateng, and I like Tommy McNamara and what he offers the team is versatility. I don't love him coming off the bench as a winger. I can see the logic behind it, solid defensively, but I don't love that. So I would like to see Boateng get a chance. I think that's why he was signed for the team, and to be, that backup winger. And I'm surprised we haven't seen him yet. Maybe he was injured this game. I didn't hear anything. He might have been injured. If he is, then all right, fine. But I'm surprised he wasn't in the 18 or the 20, whatever it is these days.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I was a little bit surprised too that McNamara was the one to come on. I would have liked to see maybe Kizza come on, get him some more minutes, because he did look a bit threatening in the first game against Chicago. I only saw him for about 10 minutes there, and then haven't seen him since. So I personally would have liked to see Kizza, but I can understand, you were trying to go from some sort of a midfield swap there with the wingers. So I guess it does make sense. But that does it for the questions. One other piece of news I wanted to touch on for some of you that might care. I know some people might not care, but Diego Fagundez scored again for Austin FC, the lone goal in their win over Minnesota United. So congrats to Diego. Seems like he's fitting in pretty well out there in Austin. But really, that wraps it up for us today. Greg, do you have any other final thoughts before we depart?
Well, I just want to give a programming note to our listeners that I'm going to be off at least next week, maybe a couple of weeks, because I'm currently moving, and moving is a real pain. But to make up for it, since you guys won't get to hear the sound of my soothing voice, I think we're going to have a little bonus podcast for you mid next week. It was a lot of fun. So if you enjoy the bonus podcast, by the way, make sure you are rating and reviewing, because they're a lot of work, and we like reviews. So please make sure you're giving us a 5-star review wherever you're listening.
And Greg, where can our listeners find you?
Oh, you can follow me at Real G Johnstone on Twitter.
And Sean, what about you? Any other final thoughts?
No, just it's fun to see the Revolution at the top of the standings after 3 games. You don't see that too often, so everybody should be enjoying going into their Sunday with the Revolution on the top of the Eastern Conference and at the top of the league for the moment.
Absolutely. And where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Sean L. Donahue.
And then for me, final thoughts. I had the same exact thought as Sean. It's nice to see Revs top in the Eastern Conference. Let's just take it from here and see how far this team can go. You can also find me over on Twitter at Kris Valukis, KrisValukis, or at Revs Revolt. And then as far as the podcast goes, you can follow us at Revolution Recap on Twitter. And also like our Revolution Recap Facebook and Instagram pages. You can also send us an email at revolutionrecap@gmail.com anytime with questions and comments. And please, if you haven't already, like Greg already mentioned, please rate and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you are listening. We'll be back next week following the match where the Revs travel to Tennessee to take on Nashville SC. Until then, thanks to everyone for listening, and go Revs.